Okay, I'd like to call the June 17th New Garden Township Board of Supervisors meeting to agenda, our Board of Supervisors meeting to opening. And if we could all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Okay, I'd like to announce that we had a couple of executive sessions. Last week we had a fact-finding mission, and we just had one earlier this morning about potential litigation. And then should we do the amending of the agenda? Add thing now?
Yes.
Okay, we have a item that came up recently about a opportunity for grant funding with PennDOT, so we need to amend the agenda to include that. Could I have a motion to amend the agenda?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Have a second? All right, any discussion? No. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nope. Okay, we'll add that to the end of the agenda at F. All right, and then we have any public comments of a general nature? All right, any public comments on agenda items specifically?
To clarify, you're asking what the grant was for? Correct. It's going to be provided in a briefing later tonight, but the township is in the middle of seeking grant funding to support the adopted master plan for the Lochner Golf Course, now Smedley Preserve. And this is about a PennDOT trap, essentially a pedestrian safety grant to help support the church road crossing. So that's what it's for.
Okay. All right. Do we have any public hearings? I assume not. Any recognitions? Nope. Presentations? All right. Can we have a approval of the meeting minutes from the May 20th meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Nope. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, we have a treasurer's report. Can I have a motion to approve the paid invoices in the amount of $61,266.69 and unpaid invoices for $333,117.33 for a total of $394,384.02?
I'll make a motion to approve the invoices and unpaid invoices in the amounts you cited.
Okay. Second?
Second the motion.
Okay. Steve, do you have any objections?
There are two invoices. Let me turn mic on. Two invoices for my employer. I will recuse from paying those bills.
Okay. Other than that, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Yep. All right. Then, no public safety reports?
There'll be a planned quarterly, second quarter public safety report for the July agenda from police and fire.
Right. And then we don't have any unfinished business, so we'll just move on to new business. We have the zoning hearing board applications for properties at 140 and 161 Thompson Road and 502 Kelleher Drive.
You want to start?
Yeah. The 160, I'm sorry, the Thompson Road is for the development there. It's not going to work anyway. Nothing is going to. That's a request for relief from some of the lighting requirements of the zoning ordinance, and is similar to what occurred with the Bancroft development, which is our lighting requirements under the zoning ordinance are fairly stringent, and they've asked for relief from some of those requirements. So that's what that one is. So I guess the question is, do you want to take a position, no position in support of the application, or to oppose the application?
Just as a little background, I think Steve will remember that we went through this in the COVID times, and we were opposed to giving them any relief. So I know Troy and Ted weren't on there at the time, but if to let you know, we'd already gone through this. So I would support take no position.
Okay, if that's your motion, David, I will say.
Okay.
All right, any other discussion?
Excuse
Say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nope.
Yeah, but I'm okay. Robert here. Oh, Robert, can you tell them what the relief sought is for 502 Kelleher Drive, please? Sorry. I can't talk.
All right, so 502 Kelleher is relief for a resale. The property owner put a contract in and then realized that there was work done for a use of a in-law suite that was not permitted, didn't come in for permits. So they called, once they recognized what the issue was, and asked, what did you have to do? What did they have to do to bring it into compliance? So that's what this zoning hearing application is for. It's for a use of the in-law suite in a residence in an R1.
So they did the work and this would be a retroactive approval, correct?
They did not do the work. They are purchasing the property.
Correct. The owner that's selling the house did.
Yes, did the work, and the new property owner, after they realized the work that had been done without any permits, came into the township asking what do they have to do to bring it into compliance.
Yeah, we actually had a very similar situation.
We did.
Is this off Watson Mill? It was the exact same thing of the previous owner had done the in-law suite, and the new owner bought it without realizing it. They'd planned to live with their children, and they just didn't realize it. I think we approved at the time. I don't recall.
And with the housing market, it was one of those ones where they lost 3 or 4 other ones and just kind of jumped into this one. So
Right.
even though it's for the zoning hearing for the use, permits will still need to be,
Mhm.
For the rest of the stuff to bring it, to ensure that it was in compliance.
Right. I mean, personally, I'm in favor of anything that increases our housing supply in the township. But I would understand if you guys wanted to take no action or take no position and leave that up to the zoning hearing board. But we did do that for someone else previously. So
Yeah,
let's
I'm
make a
trying to
motion.
remember. David, did we, I think we were in support of it. However, we made them pay some sort of permit fee.
Yeah, I'm sure we did. We made them go
Yeah.
through the regular.
Is
thing,
that
but-
something you can look up, Winnie, and draft some conditions if we support it?
Yeah, I can, if you just give me an outline of your positions.
Yeah, or take no position with
Like they-
conditions,
they-
correct?
Right.
Yeah, we should be able to figure out what was done without permits. Pretty simple.
Yeah.
So then motion would be to take no position, but if the zoning hearing board grants approval. I'm sorry, but if the zoning hearing board grants approval, then in that event, to require the permits as determined by the zoning officer?
Sure.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Then okay.
Okay, so is that your motion, Steve? Take no position with
Yes.
the. Okay, any other discussion? Nope. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nope. Well, thank you, Robert.
Thank you. The, okay. That's fine.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So we're gonna do the presentation for the Kennett Library tax voter referendum.
Well, thank you all for having myself and Brad Piper, our board president, here tonight. Last time I think I was here and we were here, we weren't quite fully open yet. We weren't fully having things going. Tonight, I kind of wanted to give you guys an update on what has transpired in that time, what we've been able to accomplish, what it means for New Garden, and how New Garden has been served by the new Kennett Library. So that is where we're going to start tonight. I'm not going to go line item by each of these, but I want to talk about, we talked about 5 literacies for the Kennett Library in the past. So what this new building means to the community and how we serve those 5 literacies. Just going to highlight these again and talk about what we've done in the new building. So in the new building, the way we served basic literacy. Our adult literacy program has been in existence since 1979. Historically, we've had to have these classes off-site because in the old library, there were no classrooms. The new library has multitude of classrooms and meeting spaces. We have 14 classes a week for this program. We're now housing all 14 of those classes at the new library, which is a huge service to this community. Those classes are English as a second language. Those are GED classes, U.S. citizenship classes. As a result from that, we're packing 25 to 30 students in each of those 14 classes. We have a waiting list to get in. We've said for a long time that, Zoom is great. It's great that we can offer that. But students want to be in person. If you don't have anywhere to meet, you can't really grow the program. There's a lot of residents here that are Spanish speaking, new to this area. This has been one of those programs that has really benefited us. There we go. Yeah. The next thing, technology, the old building, 1961, not a lot of tech in that building. One thing we wanted to do was bring some modern technology to the community and offer it to them. So one of the things we found is a lot of folks don't know how to use computers, don't know how to use technology. We're teaching tech classes in English and in Spanish. And the way that we've been able to leverage that is we have laptops that we lend out. So you come into the library, you check out a laptop, you use it while you're in the library. And for those that don't know how to use those laptops, don't know how to use their phones, we conduct classes now where everyone gets on the laptop, everyone logs in. We all know that this is the way of the world these days. So if you don't have access to technology, we're going to provide that for you. Coming up soon, one of our big things is we're working with a number of grants through the state of Pennsylvania federal government. We're going to be giving out laptops to permanently take home, not permanently, but you'll take them home for up to a month at a stretch. We'll include a printer in those, possibly Wi-Fi access through Comcast. And how it will be is for those families that don't have computers at home, don't have ability to print things out, take the computer home, it's a month worth of work for your business, or if you're a student, you can take this package home with you. Again, this is how we're serving those residents that don't have those kinds of things. Civic and social literacy. This has been one of the big things across the libraries. We love to have conversations with the community. We love to hear from you. We love to engage with you and bring folks together. One of our most popular series we launched this election cycle is called Politics and Popcorn. And what it is we bring the Democrats, the Republicans together all throughout the region. They come into our auditorium. We show a political movie. Now, they're all lighthearted, fun movies like the old movie Dave. Probably a lot of you saw that movie. We bring people in. We have a simple discussion that's relevant to us in this area, whether that's voting rights, learning how to register to vote, learning how to serve on the township. What does that mean? How do you get involved? How do you run for it? This is what we do every month now. So folks get to learn what it is to be engaged, how to be a part of this process, because where else are you going to learn how to do that? How do you ask those questions? We bring in people, experts like the folks up here. They have those discussions, and that's all part of the process. One of our biggest initiatives is our Live Better program, which is our health literacy program. We have 19 partner agencies right now as part of this program. That's everyone from Christiana Cares to Penn Medicine. What it is basically we gather these folks together once a month. We have about 5 programs a month tied with all these partners at the library. We've now been included in the next Chester County Health Department strategic plan. That's the Kennett Library. So we will be contributing as part of that is to what is it that our needs here in the southern part of the county. And because New Garden is part of our service area, we'll be including the needs for New Garden's community and what goes into the county health department needs. So the other piece there are 5 outcomes in terms of what the county health department is saying are priorities for the county. We are working towards these 5 programs a month with these 19 partner agencies to make sure that we're helping out those 5 health outcomes and determinancies for the county. Minimum wage to living wage. I know at least twice when I've come here, I've talked about this. With the new building, with all these classrooms, with the ability to offer all these services, we're going beyond just GED, citizenship, English as a second language. Recently had the opportunity to meet the CEO of the Welcoming Center out of Philadelphia. And for those of you that don't know, they're serving in a similar capacity in the city of Philadelphia in terms of what we'd like to achieve here in Chester County, particularly southern Chester County. What it is, you might be a new immigrant to this country and you have no idea how to move forth in your life. So what they do is they take a look at you as an individual. They help you find employment. They help you learn English. They help you get your GED. We have an example of a New Garden resident that is with us for this program right now. She is a medical doctor out of Lebanon, but she doesn't have the ability, the certifications to be a doctor here in the US. So what we're doing is we're helping her, instead of going to work, just a random job, we're connecting her directly to the health industry, then getting her tied into Westchester University that she can get an accreditation. So no, she won't be a doctor, but she'll be at a master's level performance of getting a job here in this country. That is a true living wage, as opposed to living an hourly wage rate. This is exactly what this program is. It's gotten so much traction that about 3 weeks ago, I was up in Exton with the Chester County Economic Development Council. They're going to work from their end to now tap all businesses throughout the county to see what are the needs, how do we place our residents, again, who live right here into those better living wage jobs. What are the job gaps? One of the things that was mentioned to me was particularly to some of the mushroom houses. They can learn English, but what about English for management, English for business, English for accounting? These are all the kind of classes that we're now able to offer in the new library so that the residents are not stuck at the base level job. They're now going to take our English and other kind of classes and move up those ranks. So moving beyond just those basics, I wanted to highlight some pictures from the library and also kind of some of the programs that have gone into some of that. This is our auditorium. Some successes to date. We show weekly movies. We had the Jazz Festival here the last week of April. That was all throughout the region. There was about 4 sites for that. There were several hundred people that came through for that. Just this 3 nights ago, Drexel University brought their entire, one of their departments out here. They did something on a federal grant that they received related to art. So they did a thing of where they're doing augmented reality with artwork all throughout the East Coast. They're bringing that same technology here to the Kennett Library. They're taking artwork from inside the library. They're doing 3D imaging of the stuff, which then will go on our website. They're offering this technology to places like you guys as well. So if New Garden says, you know what, we want to take that clock, we want to digitize it, put it on the website so anyone from around the world can spin it, see what it looks like in true augmented reality. This is, again, a partnership through the Kennett Library that we want to offer to all the 8 municipalities here. Because we have a historic area. We want to digitize some of these historic things in nature and then be able to share them out to anyone around the world who wants to learn a little more about what it is to be here. We had play The Wizard of Oz, and in February, the Kennett Symphony is giving their first performance in the new Kennett Library, so that should be exciting. The children's department, it's a lot of excitement, but I'm going to start and say that one of our greatest achievements in the last 12 months has been at New Garden Park. So we established, we just had our 1-year anniversary a week or 2 ago at New Garden Park. We have a story walk there. It changes every single month. The kids come through, they read the story, they take a little walk in the park, go to the next story walk, and they keep going as they move all the way through the park. Most recently, though, we've added a sensory garden, and Meadowitos is where at that park as well. So the sensory garden is really great. Kids that are having sensory issues, if you go to the little garden towards the beginning of the park there's special kinds of plants they can touch that has different kind of feel, different things they can smell. This is all to engage those children, you know, on the spectrum or whoever might be learning to see what that is to be in that kind of park. So New Garden has been a great success for us. At the 1-year anniversary, we had 85 attendees show up that say they had library cards. Those are New Garden residents that said they have library cards here. The last piece about this for the children, we are piloting a program this summer with the Kennett Consolidated School District and particularly New Garden Elementary. The summer learning has changed this year. In the past, you know, it's been traditional summer schools, what kids do between rising 1st through 5th graders. We're now housing that for the school district this summer. So every week for 5 weeks from the beginning of July through the middle of August, the Kennett Library is a site for the school district summer learning. There's going to be big programs brought in at night. There's going to be events during the day. At the end of the summer, we'll have a big celebration, inviting all the elementary kids to come celebrate up on the terrace. And Most notably, also every Wednesday throughout that period, there'll be free food offered in the parking lot. So a grant through a federal group called Believe and Achieve. There's these fresh food, fruits and vegetable boxes will be handed out starting at 8:30 in the morning. If you show up that morning, you don't need to show ID or anything. We're just trying to target these families that normally get those healthy foods sent home through the school. They will instead come to the library in our parking lot. We'll have a nice big tent set up for folks. Pick up your free food box, go home, get those kids those fresh fruits and vegetables. That's kind of what we're offering for the students this summer. I'm going to talk a little more about stats coming up later, but I did want to say that the library has a lot of new space. And as part of that, our total volumes, number of books in the collection is up by 7%. That's nowhere near where we can get to still. If you go up to the second floor of the children's department, I'd say 25% of our shelves are still empty. We're still adding books. I know we talk a lot about tech, all the new things, but we are adding books. And I'm going to talk a little more about the stats for that in a little minute here. I talk about the adult literacy program. We have 89 active pairs, but in addition to be able to do those one-on-one tutoring classes, one of our other big successes this spring throughout tax season was VITA. And VITA is a federal tax preparation service that is entirely free for anyone making under $85,000 a year. Huge service. Any one of you can qualify for it if you make less than $85,000 a year. The Kennett Library was the host site for this 3 nights a week. We were the only site in the southern part of Chester County. And we served 30 New Garden residents as part for this. Again, it's not just our first year, but we served 30 folks as part of this program for this year. We had recent immigrants from Ukraine. We had recent immigrants from Russia, Afghanistan. These are people that have no other way to get their taxes done. But again, they come to the library, they get it processed for free. These are all tax professionals that do it, that are volunteers through the state. They get to do that here. We even had I won't say the name, but we had an NBA player take advantage of this. He's not in the NBA, he's in the G League that plays in Wilmington. But again, we're one of the only sites in the region that you can come to get this done. Terrace. This is an outdoor seating area for us. It's been a lot of fun to have this as a nice place to sit. It's hot right now. It's probably not the best time of year to sit out there, but we are going to have a phase 2 at some point. When phase 2 comes, we're talking about an awning that would be out top. So if you want to come sit in the comfy shade, that'd be a great time to do that. Our AV recording studio, we just got a grant through the Longwood Foundation. And through that grant, we are now finally going to be able to staff this room as well as the Children's Makerspace, all open hours of the library. And by the end of 2025, we will now be open 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 on Saturday, and 1 to 5 on Sunday. So we're going to be offering over 70 hours a week of service to the community. You know, when I first took over, we were open 2 nights a week, and that was it. And now we're going to open 5 nights a week, Saturdays, and full 7 days a week of service to this community. So we're thrilled to get that grant, but again, that directly serves this community here. One little tidbit about the makerspace, I will say, Longwood Gardens. There's a lot of wild turkeys on their property and in the general area. They wanted to know where those turkeys were migrating to. Longwood Gardens came to the Kennett Library and said, we'd love if you could help us track our wild turkey population. So our maker team thought about it. They said, here's what we can do. We will 3D print collars that have little RFID and kind of radio frequency tags in them. We put the tags in there. They went out into the community, out into the woods, put these tags on these turkeys. There's now wild turkeys that have Kennett Library logos running all throughout the wilderness. They're now tracking through Kennett Library technology. Sounds silly, but this is what we can do in this facility. And it's great to have that here. Some of the exciting programs here, Day of the Dead. We now offer cooking classes with a local chef. Again, I show movies. Mount Cuba has been through. We have French. We have an entire French program. So it's been a really exciting first year here. So stats. Let's get down to stats. So our Wi-Fi usage is now the second highest in the county. The only people that are higher than us is the district center up in Exton. So we're the highest individual library now in the county. We were 4th prior to the new library. Now we're 1st. Our visitation rate is more than double what it was of last year. Circulation is now the highest in the county. Again, this is the highest we've ever been. So people say books are going away. People don't use the library. Our numbers are the highest they've been as far back as I can track now. So we are seeing more people, more books being checked out ever in the history of the Kennett Library. Computer usage is up over 400%. So people are coming in, they're checking out those laptops, they're sitting there and using it, and they're staying in the library. They're not coming in, grabbing a book and leaving. And to that extent, we did win an award back in the fall for Best Public Construction in Eastern Pennsylvania. Thank you for your donation to our capital campaign. It's well worth it because we won Best Construction Award. Specifically to New Garden. So we have gone in 1 year from May to May, from 1,900 cardholders in New Garden to 2,467. That's a huge jump. I mean, in just 1 year. In April alone, 342 New Garden residents attended programs. Again, that's just 1 month. The month of April, you guys are up 25%. You're up to 3,372 books checked out. And in the last month, you guys are up 300%. New Garden is up 300% in visitation of the library. So if you're wondering if New Garden residents are using the library, you guys are up 300% from this time last year. And most importantly, maybe there are 88 New Garden children currently enrolled in the Imagination Library. Those of you that don't know what that program is, that is through the Dolly Parton Foundation, and we help sponsor that with several other entities. And every child under the age of 5 is eligible for this program. You get a book mailed home to your home every single month. It's totally free to you, and you get to keep that book. The goal is to get 48 books in your home by the time, or 60 books, sorry, but in your home by the time you're 5 years old. Build your home library, build your literacy rates. This is how the Kennett Library is contributing to every resident in our service area. This is just a little flyer for the Imagination Library, just as a promo. Please go online and sign up for it. Again, totally free for you all. If you have grandchildren, just make sure they're a Chester County resident. We take care of the entire county, so it's not just limited to here. Some of the classes, again, just some of the things, classic movies for children. We do art exhibitions every single month. Every month we have an art gallery wall. We put up a new thing. It's the first Thursday of the month. We do an unveiling with wine and cheese. We have cooking classes every month, crochet, yoga, story time. Again, a broad collection of things that we never could have envisioned in the old library. That's the library. It's what we've achieved in our first year. I'm now going to turn it over to Brad Piper, our board president.
Thank you, Chris. Every time I listen to Chris talk about what the Kennett Library offers, it's just exhausting. There are so many programs and services. One of the reactions I typically get from folks is, are you sure you're a library? It sounds more like you're a community center or a resource center. And I said, you're absolutely right. At our heart, we are a library, but we're a library, a resource center, and a community center. And I think that is the definition of a 21st century library. So I do want to begin with a thank you to New Garden, because you've been one of our most progressive municipalities supporting us in the new building as well as our operations. And I'm here tonight to make another request. And so we'll begin with a little bit of history of what has transpired over time. So very quickly, as far as tax referendums, back in 2014, the township authorized a resolution, a tax referendum, asking residents if they would support an annual dedicated library tax. That tax was for 0.1 mil. Bottom line, the referendum was unsuccessful. It missed by a slim margin. But this was for the Bayard-Taylor Library, the old library, if you will. Then we came back in 2017. We didn't give up. This was still the Bayard-Taylor Library at the time. And we asked it again for the same 0.1 mil dedicated library tax support. This time, the referendum was successful and passed by a large margin. One of the stipulations was that these funds would be dedicated towards the operations of the library, the type of programs and services that Chris was describing. It was not for the construction of the new library. That was a separate activity. That was a separate capital campaign. And again, I need to thank all the residents of New Garden, because you supported us in our new library, a contribution of $500,000 made over a period of 5 years. You're currently in the 4th year of that 5-year pledge. So again, we thank you for that. That new library did in fact open, right? Last August was our grand opening, and we're coming up on our 1-year anniversary at this point. So what is it that we're asking for at this point? And what I've outlined here is the fair share guidance. The Kennett Library serves 8 municipalities. That's 7 townships and the borough of Kennett Square. And the library, as we look at what Chris has described in terms of providing all the literacy services and programs, for the community as we look at what it takes to operate those programs as well as operate over the hours that we've talked about. We look at a fair share contribution of 0.2 mil real estate tax from each of our 8 municipalities. So the current status, as you see, is that we have 4 municipalities already on a dedicated library tax. We have Kennett Square, that's at 0.2 mil. We have Kennett Township at 0.2 mil. If you jump down to East Marlboro, they're actually the oldest in terms of supporting us with a dedicated tax. That's 0.183 mil. But our intent is to go back to them in 2026 to get them up to 0.2 mil as well, or make that request. New Garden is currently at 0.1 mil, and the proposal is that we would like to increase that to 0.2 mil by making that request in a referendum in the upcoming November election. Also in the November election, we're going to Newland Township. They're currently making annual contributions. And again, we're looking to move them to a 0.2 mil contributions. The bottom 3, Pennsbury, Pocopson, and West Marlboro, again, they're currently on an annual contribution to the library. Our intent, as I said, is to have all 8 municipalities at the fair share guidance of 0.2 mils. You kind of see this progressing over 2 or 3 years. The reason for that is in terms of the logistics and our bandwidth for pursuing these campaigns, if you will, we can do about 2 a year in terms of what we can handle. So what would we like to see appear on your November ballot? That is a question. Do you favor increasing New Garden Township's existing real estate property tax dedicated to the Kennett Library by 0.1 mil to a total of 0.2 mil, with the revenue from such increase to be used exclusively to fund the operations of the Kennett Library, the things that you heard from Chris? So what does that mean in terms of dollars and cents? Because that's what's really important. So this is a little complicated, but basically looking at the assessments, property assessments here in New Garden Township. There's different classes, but if you look at basically the grand total assessment and applying what is today's cost, which is 0.1 mil, that's $83,000. Obviously, 0.2 mil would double that to about $165,000. The biggest chunk of the assessments falls into the residential category. So that's kind of the total number, but what's more important is how does it affect individuals in terms of what does that cost mean? So if we take the residential average assessment of $174,000, that means this 0.2 mil tax over a year's period would be a little less than $35, $34.89. The median point is a little higher than that. That's $37.82 for the full year. And if you look across all classes of assessments, that's a bit higher still at $40 over the entire year. Looking at the bottom then, that means for, again, I'll say the average residential household, it's a little less than $35 a year for all the programs and services and expanded hours that Chris had described. On a monthly basis, it's under $3. On a weekly basis, it's 67 cents. 67 cents. So what's the value proposition? What do you get for that type of contribution? I think Chris has kind of explained already kind of the, I'll call it the community impact of all the programs, the literacies, the services that we provide. And I think on that basis, in terms of strengthening our community, I think it's a pretty strong argument for spending 67 cents a week. But beyond that, if you look at this as an investment, the things that Chris talked about, we put dollar figures against what's the cost of an ALP, adult literacy program class, and the student learning. What's that one-on-one tutoring cost if you were to go outside for that tutoring? The books and media that we circulate, what's that cost? Museum passes that we offer, programs that we offer, reference and tech help, as well as the wireless and the Wi-Fi sessions that we help, that we provide. If you add all of that up, it's a little shy of $6 million. We run the Kennett Library on an annual budget of $1.5 million. So if you do the math, that means for every dollar you invest in the library, we provide $4 back in terms of the value of our services. So again, I think that's a pretty strong argument. And then the final one I'll give you is that even if you never set foot in the library, you can still take advantage of the library with our various subscriptions. I can tell you in my household, I know that we save a couple $100 every year. I dropped my Philadelphia Digital Inquirer newspaper subscription because I can get it free through the library. $50 a year I've saved. Magazines, we have about 6 to 7 magazines in our household. We've dropped those subscriptions because I can get them through the library. The library has over 180 titles of magazines. So it's a pretty sure bet that whatever you're reading, we have and you can access online. In addition to that, there's movies. There's thousands of movies that you can stream to your home devices. There's digital books. And yeah, you can get digital books online, but you're going to pay through Amazon. Or you can get audio books online, but you're going to pay through Amazon Audible. So the big point here is all of these are free with your library card. So, yes, sir.
Sir, I would ask that you could just come up and speak into the microphone if you have a comment in the middle of a presentation.
So maybe if I can clarify, we're asking for a referendum for the operations of the building,
Operation.
the staff, and the various services and programs that we provide.
Movies, and that's our referendum will not pay toward that.
I'm not sure I'm understanding your question. I'm sorry. So the,
Okay, well, explain to me what. I'm not arguing against it or
No,
anything. Voted on to increase the property tax for what purpose? For us? What's the purpose that you want us to approve a referendum?
so the increase
Yeah.
property tax that we're requesting that you would fund would be used to support the operations in the
So-
library.
Okay, tell me what operations means.
The payroll that we pay our staff, the cost of the various programs and services that Chris described, our building maintenance costs,
Right.
everything it costs to run our operations. Yeah,
So books are operations?
Yes.
12% of our total budget, we're required by the Chester County Library System to invest at least 12% of our annual budget in books and media.
I'm just confused how that is an operation, is a book. It's okay to buy books, but that's not necessary, in my mind, it's not an operational expense. But you're telling me it is.
Yeah.
To be a certified public library in the state of Pennsylvania, to qualify to receive state funds and federal funds, which we receive both. The state of Pennsylvania contributes 119,000 to us, and the feds contribute about 135,000. For us to qualify for those funds, we need to spend 12% of our annual operating budget on books, ebooks, movies, any of that kind of stuff. So.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Just real quick, can we get through the end of the presentation first and just kind of make sure, then we can have it open for public comment time after the Board of Supervisors?
Yeah,
Thank you.
and I think we're really at that point. The final thing I was going to say is New Garden has already supported us in the new building. We feel that, the new building is a 100-year commitment that we've made to the community in bricks and mortar in terms of providing the services for books and media and programs and services. So again, this is why at this point, as we look at how do we reach the full potential of that building, that we're asking you to support us with this added funding. So that's everything I had.
Okay. Any of the supervisors have questions?
Yeah, I have a comment. First, I want to thank Chris, Brad, thank you. And we are really honored to have you in our park. and I'm glad that that's successful. In looking at the numbers, it looks like our population has pretty much stayed the same. We've had a little bit of growth, but the card holders from New Garden, the numbers have gone up. So that tells me there's an attraction, there's a need. And again, thank you.
One credit to you all for putting Dan Gannon and Barb Bolton on the board. Dan Gannon has made it a personal drive of his to get every single elementary school bused to the new library, every grade between kindergarten and fifth grade, and they can all sign up for library cards. I mean, I can't tell you how many hundreds of cards we've processed of the kids because Dan's single-handedly making that happen, and that's your representative.
I would ask if
You
you have
wanted-
questions for public comment time, please approach and align here, and we can ask them into the for the recording here for the public meeting.
I think he's asking you to go to the mic.
Yes.
I saw your savings calculation on the newspapers. I think you're very low. The Inquirer's on order of
So-
$18 a
so-
month.
So
New
that was
York
a,
Times,
that was a
is way
digital
more.
subscription.
Huh?
That was a digital subscription to the Inquirer. A hard copy edition, I think it's about 150 per year.
you know, I'm talking about the digital. The digital is way up over that. It's $18 a month.
Okay,
And the New York Times is way beyond that.
I'll update our figures.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you.
Your presentation indicates you do a lot of good things for the community. You mentioned a phase two. What is phase two? And are you going to come back and ask for another increase to cover that? Or where are you going to get the money to cover phase two?
So I'll start the answer for that. So our new building costs $22.3 million. The municipalities, all 8 municipalities, provided 2.5 million of that. New Garden provided specifically 500,000 of that. Where did the rest come from? It came from the entire communities in terms of individual donations, fundraising drives that we had. But another big piece was grants. We have a RACP, that's a Pennsylvania State grant for new construction called RACP. We have a second one from the state called an LSA. And we had a HUD, a federal HUD grant. Collectively, they represent about $4.5 million of funding. The RACP that I mentioned, it has a potential of 3.9 million, but it has $1 million, but it has a lot of qualifiers to go with it. For the current construction, we think we expect that we'll get a reimbursement of 2.9 versus the 3.9 million that's available. So we have another $1 million that if we can find qualifying topics, we can put that $1 million towards those projects. So that's phase two. And when we talk about things that we would like to do in phase two, it's can we qualify for that additional $1 million of state funding? So no, we are not going to be asking for more capital funding from the community.
So you're not going to come back in 2 years and ask for another increase?
We will not.
5 years?
This is a 100-year facility, so I won't say we won't come back in 25 years, but we're not going to come back next year.
Increase continually.
Excuse me?
Operating cost is going to increase continually. There's no way to avoid that. And the other was more of a comment. You realize there was just a significant township tax increase. And now you're asking for more.
Yeah.
Okay,
It,
that was just a comment. I didn't, thank you.
thank you.
So the increase in costs for libraries, this is a nationwide issue, operational costs. Thing that Pennsylvania does not do, and when I was in Oklahoma prior to this, we qualified for a 3-to-1 federal match program. My work right now, as I get more settled in this job, this building, this community, I'm going to be pushing the state of Pennsylvania to up their commitment to the state of Pennsylvania libraries, because then that 3-to-1 match program, every dollar the state puts in, we get 3 back from the feds. You want to talk about how we're going to be sustainable? There's our answer. It's already out of the state budget, but yes. It is. But for a 3-to-1, it saves you money in the long run.
Thank you very much.
No, did, Mr.
Sorry.
Yeah,
You're gonna put the millage against the property owners, right?
Yes, sir.
Why does all these things go against the property owners? You got townhouses and you got all these apartments going in county. Why don't they pay something instead of going to the backs of the property owners in this town, in our township and every other one?
So I have a property that's a townhouse in East Marlboro, and I pay the East Marlboro dedicated library tax. So that is part of the tax. For apartments, it's the owner of the apartments who pay the real estate taxes, and that is where the burden falls.
Do you charge for a card to get in the library?
No,
Do you think you should?
that's not our mission. We are to
So all
provide free
all these
service.
programs are free.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thanks.
okay, any other questions, comments from the public? No? All right, thank you for the presentation. Okay, then Winnie has
Right.
legal stuff.
On the agenda is no, that's good. Is a resolution to speak to the referendum question that the gentleman mentioned. It is exactly as he presented it, except that the resolution includes the language that the current real estate property tax is 2.77 mils. So the voters of New Garden Township will have in front of them what the current tax is, and the request is to increase it from 0.1 mils to 0.2 mils. So this is a resolution for the board to adopt to place that question on a referendum for the November election. Yes. No,
2.87,
2.87.
2.87.
We'll increase it to, we're all math whizzes here. It will increase it to 2.87. Doesn't say that, but it will. It says currently what it is. So you have to do the math yourself, but it's 0.1. It will increase it. It includes the 0.1 that's already there, but not the new one.
Yep.
Yes.
I can understand the thing that you just said. So you're saying that what will be on the referendum?
Let me just read it to you, or it perhaps it will say, do you favor increasing New Garden Township's existing real estate property tax dedicated, there it is, right there. Yeah, except that the New Garden resolution adds the following sentence. The current real estate property tax is 2.77 mils. That's to alert the voters that that's what the tax is now. And if you vote for an additional 0.1 mils, you can do the math because we clearly had trouble with it. It's 2.87. Not the math. It says the current real estate property tax is 2.77 mils. Yes, I just said, I'm sorry, I don't know how to make it clearer. This resolution includes that sentence. That will be presented to the voters.
So everything up there plus the sentence, the current real estate property tax is 2.77 mils.
Yes.
Sure.
An motion to adopt it.
All right. Do you have a motion to adopt? Any? Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second, and that includes the additional language.
Yeah. All right. Any discussion? No. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nope. Okay. All right. Passes.
Yeah. And just for clarity, the last motion, the last referendum in 2017 included that language.
Right.
So this tracks that.
All right. Okay. Yes, Claire, if you want to come up, please.
Regular election,
Correct.
so
Yes.
it'll be part of the
Yeah.
that big election, and it'll just be a question for us in New Garden.
Yeah, so when you get your ballot, if you're in New Garden North, South 1, South 2, it'll say vote for president, vote for Senate, vote for US representative, vote for state senator, vote for Pennsylvania representative. And then at the very bottom, hopefully on the front page, a lot of times they make you flip to the back, it'll have that resolution. It'll say yes, no.
Great, thanks, guys.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. All right, and next up we have the aqua sewer rate change information from Chris.
We're on item C.
Oh, I'm
Board of
sorry, I
Appeals.
skipped right over. I do that a lot, I'm sorry. Item C is the Board of Appeals, the formation of a joint Board of Appeals with London Grove and East Marlborough Township.
So a little background on this, as you can see,
Robert, you can raise that up. I don't know how it got shrunk down.
as you can see, it's a requirement of both the International Building Code and the International Fire Code. Board of Appeals is a requirement for the building code, qualified by experience and training to matters pertaining to building construction. Cannot be an employee of the township. So myself could not sit on the Board of Appeals because I work for New Garden. I can be on the Board of Appeals for London Grove where I live. So that's kind of how it works. It will be a year on Thursday for me here, and we have not had any of these vacancies filled. The folks that were on it or listed at the time were either retired or had, other commitments. So this is kind of, just in speaking with the other municipalities, doing a joint venture, which is not uncommon. It gives you a pool of more applicants. So if you take two folks that work for London Grove Township or for East Marlborough Township, they live in London Grove. So we would be able to get them in that pool to serve for New Garden. The other part of it is where with this, we can do it during business hours. This doesn't have to be a 7 o'clock at night task where we can just kind of share those resources, no different than the co-op for public works. So that's where we are. It currently, I've talked with East Marlborough and London Grove. They're interested in it. They're supposed to be, doing the same thing with their boards, whether they're, interested or not. The other part of it is potentially bringing in others. Whether we do that or not is a whole, is a different thing. But it's just basic of what is the board's interest in it. I don't think there would have to be too much legal, but I certainly can run that by Winnie.
Well, if you form a joint board, that has to be an intergovernmental agreement. If you just appoint the same people, because they don't have to be residents, it doesn't have to be an agreement. So it's
Right, I would keep it as loose as possible to keep that part of it out.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm supportive of it.
Yeah,
Opinions?
I would also be supportive of it. And this is just basically for fire, International Fire Code and the building codes.
Correct.
How would you split the costs between the different municipalities?
Actually, there shouldn't really be any costs other than the individual's time, which would be, included in your normal workday. It's similar to Public Works being in a co-op, where if you need a flagger for the day, somebody goes there for 8 hours. It's the same kind of.
And I would say that I would assume that the fee structure would be that the township for whom the application is made would cover the costs of notice and all of that.
Right.
And the board members don't get very much money anyway, so.
Yeah, they wouldn't get any compensation.
Mhm.
But we've had, and there's not very many of them. I mean, there are very few and far between, but we've had the potential probably for 3 or 4. And we haven't had anybody in we could, go to.
Okay, well, I'm supportive of it. Need a formal motion or just a sense of, we think it's a good idea.
However you want to do it.
I don't know that you need a motion. I think he was just getting, and then he and Chris can begin to work on the process, I think, if that's what you're
I
okay.
think it would be a final crafting of an intermunicipal agreement and then, subject to township manager authorization to go into that. We'd be working with East Marlboro Township, their manager, and he's been discussed as well as London Grove initially with the ability to onboard, kind of have like a joint area pool of eligible. And that's the biggest thing here. It's the municipal planning code's assertion for highly stringent requirements, which makes it very hard to fill these with people who already aren't like your zoning and BCO type officials within the townships because they have all of the criteria met.
Right.
They just can't do it within their own municipality, which makes it a little sticky.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I think this is a great workaround. Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert.
Yep.
Okay, now we can move on to the aqua sewer rate change.
Just making sure the screen share is working on the broadcast here. All right. Well, good evening, members of the board, resident staff, Chris Himes, Township Manager. I'm here tonight to address what was provided as a general inquiry from a resident in terms of just understanding what the proposed rate change to the PUC that Aqua notified. I think it was in the end of May through the bills. And of course, that came into, well, what does this mean? And so this is our attempt, and this is our understanding of applying that rate proposal change, which for most people who aren't understanding, the rate proposal change is basically to increase that base rate component, which is part of your bill. And of course, other components with it are the more of the consumption usage rate changes as well. But that's what drives the actual notification process. That's what drives the actual process reviewed by the PUC. And of course, right now, it drives our own analysis of what this means. So anytime you click off the screen, there we go. So there you go. On May 23rd, Aqua PA notified all their customers, not just the ones in New Garden Township, that their intent was to adjust water and wastewater rates. For us, applicability would be to the wastewater rates, citing that their cost for capital improvements across the entire span of all systems was going to be $953 million, spanning roughly a 2-year period. So that's kind of what they're pleading to the PUC to be able to approve. So Aqua's base rate increase requires investigation, as I just said, approval by the PUC, which can take up to 9 months with an expected decision timeline around the beginning of 2025. So that process has already started. So with that, the PUC's procedure for approval of rates allows concerned ratepayers to submit inputs via 3 primary methods, because the common one is, well, how do I get my inputs to where it needs to go? So how do I submit a potential grievance or just kind of a letter of concern or whatever it might be? That information is all available mostly online, but you do have by mail as well as by email. That's just to submit comments. So if you just want to be something that is attached to, this is my resident household, this is the impact on my bill, I do not support this, kind of so on and so forth. That's kind of primary item number 1 here. If you want to attend the public hearing, I'm not sure if they're doing it remotely still. I know that they have the in-person attendance, so someone can I haven't gotten clarity on that one yet, but that's also another way to essentially participate in the process. And then, of course, if you have a grievance that you feel that you are able to submit a formal complaint, and that's what makes you like a party to the process. So similar to how we have our conditional use hearings, and you are a party as a status person who's kind of in proximity to the site for the impact of the property, you can kind of attach yourself to that proceeding. And of course, that comes with a level of review in terms of what you are eligible as a party to the actual grievance process. So those are kind of the primary 3. Of course, you can always reach out to your elected officials, your supervisors. We've had received a certain number of residents reaching out directly to the township. Those are all venues to essentially assert your, I would say, opinion or your actual impact or whatever you want it to be. And those people can also collectively kind of, in this case, advocate on your behalf. But that's kind of a non-formal component. That's more of just lobbying support. So with that, this is not the first time this has happened. It happened an initial time back in 2021. This was post transfer of sale of the assets to Aqua PA from the township. But there is some differentiation between what was under the 2021 rate review process and what is now in the 24 one. So it's important to understand the differences, to understand kind of why the rates are put as what they are and what that impact means. So the one kind of key component for the rate zone 11 was we were the only, so zones are, to my understanding, kind of all over the map. It's more collectively based off of aligned consumption bases, and they kind of put you in groups based off of your collective consumptions, and that's what puts you in a zone. So this isn't to say if we're in zone 11, there's 4 other zones, 11 members, and they're all within a radius of us. These could be people from other parts of Pennsylvania. They're just on Aqua PA system. So they look at you as a municipal division that has similar usage habits as other municipal divisions, if that makes sense. But initially, as rate zone 11 back in 2021, we weren't with anybody. We were by ourselves. So that's one where we were under review as a single entity, which, of course, that kind of yielded what this was. This wasn't the proposal. This is what the adopted rate process came to be after it was approved by the PUC. So of course, for everybody in this room, primarily as a residential ratepayer, this was what your rate proposal adopted and implementation meant to in terms of impact on your bill. Your base rate is 136.38, and you have your excess 1, excess 2 levels in terms of total volumetric amount of flow going through your household on a quarterly basis. Of course, it's also charted out into different commercial structures as well as industrial. Now, what's changing for the 2024 rate change proposal is we're no longer in zone 11. We are zone 2. We're actually included in a municipal division with a bunch of other municipalities. So the primary differences are, there's no base versus excess thresholds. So this model is kind of going away. It's kind of just 1 per 1,000 rate all the way up. The reduction of usage rate. So as you can see, those excesses, that excess threshold goes away. And instead of having, let's say if you use 10,000 gallons at 23 per 1,000, you'd be 10,000 gallons at $12 per gallon of 1,000 gallons. So your total consumption rate is actually going to go down almost by half. So that's good news if you're a person who's using a significant amount of volume for it. And of course, also, kind of the bandwidth jump from 15K under to 15K and over is also going to come precipitously down. So if you're over 15K, it's going to be, almost by 1/3 or 2/3 reduction. And then, of course, the reason it's happening in the first place is comes at the behest of increasing the base rate, which, of course, is roughly an increase of about $31 a quarter. So that's going to go up. So you're asking about what? Correct. So if you use 1,000 gallons, you get charged $23. If you use 2,000 gallons, you get 23 times 2, so you get $46. So that is just the base per 1,000 rate. Now, instead of that, it'll go the first 1,000, you'll get billed $12. The second 1,000, another 12, so you'll be billed $24. So instead of being billed $46 on top of that base rate, you're getting billed $24 on top of that base rate. What's that? They are lowering the base rate. And we'll get to how this, before we get into some of the semantics of it, I just want to get through the presentation and we'll open to public comment time. Yeah. So essentially, this is how it plays out in terms of uses your residential rate of 167 plus this is what the actual proposal is going to be. So per 1,000 gallons, $12. Quarterly, yes. And then of course there's a non-residential rate. So instead of having commercial 1, commercial 2, industrial, they're just lumping it into one gross non-residential rate as well. In actuality, this is pretty standard across all zones. It's just, we were essentially treated in 2021 as this kind of, I can't actually fully state why that actually came to be, other than the fact that we were an unknown asset at the time. And that's just me making an assumption of it. And so they charted us out as kind of like a collective starting point. And then they're changing it now based off of their known consumption over the course of the last few years. So to better understand the rate change proposal, this was to kind of annualize our last usage data that we had. So of course we had to use 4-year-old data. We couldn't get Aqua usage data. They don't provide private usage data to the public entities to be able to analyze it. But essentially what I wanted to understand is as of 2020, and of course, I don't know how much people's consumption habits have changed over the course of the last 4 years. Of course, if your bills went up, you probably used less. But for those that didn't, they kind of kept those habit patterns just based off of their volume demand. This was the way to kind of best apply and understand how it impacts our residents, which was the reason we did this assessment and this analysis in the first place. So as of 2021, we had 1,800 total accounts. 95% of those accounts were residential. So we're solving a residential issue in terms of understanding it. And that's why we looked at this analysis. We only looked at residential because it's the vast majority of the total overall accounts. Of the 95%, 93% use between 22K and 4K, of course. That's a kind of a lopping off of the endpoints, if you will. So you have that kind of bell curve. You know, a lot of people fall within the more kind of closer center lines. So there's not like a lot of people using like 40,000 or 0 or 1 or 2 kind of thing. So it kind of tapers off at the ends there. And then of course of that 93%, there's a much narrower bandwidth that's 70%. So a lot of people kind of fit into that, we'll call it 11 to 12,000 gallons plus or minus 3,000 per quarter, if that makes sense. So that's kind of where we really wanted to look at is that's the kind of substantive impact area that we're looking at. So these are the kind of the bands of users, if you will, in the township. So you can see kind of at the meaty middle, and of course as it tapers off to the higher increase rates and the lower increase rates. So by applying that data to the new proposed rate, like I said, subject to habit changes over the course of the last few years, the bulk majority of people will see a net reduction in their quarterly sewer bills based off of their habitual consumption. So this was validated on the township side and validated by the Aqua side as well. So those are kind of the two ends, and they both kind of did the studies independently, and the results were the exact same. So we're just applying gallons and math, and they're coming to the same kind of pretty standard result. So with that, and I think my box kind of pops up here, you know, the higher you are, you're going to see a significant decrease per quarter, and then all the way down to even the lower users are going to see some sort of a reduction as well. So it's kind of incentivizing, or not incentivizing, but it's giving relief to those kind of individuals who have a significant usage rate right now, but everybody is going to see some sense of a savings over their quarterly bills based off of their consumption. So of course, like I said, this was that kind of meaty band, so a lot of people will see savings per their quarterly bills. That's just, like I said, based off of the 2020 data. If you are using less, you know, it might have shifted over to the right a little bit, so there might be more people between 14 and 8, but that's an assumption. But at least this is knowledge so you understand what is happening, as well as to the residents themselves, that is the expectation based off of this rate change proposal. Now, the reason they're increasing the base rate is, like I said, it's to offset the cost of capital. If you've ever learned much about utilities as an enterprise, capital is essentially kind of carved out based off of that flat kind of base rate that you set. You know, that's a kind of a fixed revenue that you need to be able to transfer to whatever fund you have in order to do project work, not necessarily operations type work, which is funded mostly by all the other kind of things coming through. So that's what made sense to me when they said that we're going to increase the base rate, but we're actually going to lower the actual volumetric cost. So I would open this up for questions from the board as well as residents. I'm only applying the math. I didn't decide to make these rates. I can't answer as to why. This isn't me speaking on behalf of Aqua PA. It was just that we got a significant amount of emails and concerned residents, so we just wanted to best translate it into simple terms so people can understand how it impacts them. I mean, I also know that this is in concert with a PICO plan rate change as well. I do know that that is a whole different entity and a whole different kind of, we'll call it, I guess in this case, planned increase, I'm assuming from that side. But it wasn't part of the inquiry from the township side, considering obviously the history with Aqua and the wastewater system. So
Thank you, Chris.
questions from the board?
Yeah, I think a lot of the residents were confused because it says rate increase at the top of the thing, and that's for the entirety of the system. It's going up. We just happen to be in a place where it's going down because they were really sticking the screws to us.
Chris, can you comment on what you did to corroborate the information that you pulled together?
So I pulled this information that's still resident within our own ERP system. So all of our utility building consumption data is still there. It's just sitting in stored data component in 2020. So we just analyzed that based off of these plan rates. And then essentially I just took the same, we'll call it base rate chart here. And I just gave that to Aqua PA's team and just said, is this essentially correct? And they validated that it was. And so, I mean, like I said, it's pretty standard. You're just taking base rate, a calculation based off of thousands rounded to the nearest thousand, and then applying the per thousand consumption total. So it's pretty basic in terms of you opened up your own bill and looking at it, you should see the same ones. And then, of course, we actually took a couple spot check bills. Thank you for volunteering and showing us those, and of course, the math added up too. So.
Any other supervisor questions, comments? Yeah, if anyone has any questions, if you want to come to the microphone so people online can hear you and we're. Chris is able to answer anything you have.
Where does Chester Water Authority fit into all this?
They're a separate entity, so they do the water part of it. So it goes in and then Aqua taxes you on the outflow. So this is a completely separate. They haven't petitioned for any rate case or anything like that. And they're still in the fight to prevent them from being taken over.
So to my understanding, there is another part where Aqua is changing their water rates for the systems that they provide water services for. We're only looking at the wastewater component because that's the only thing that impacts us as local ratepayers from Aqua's perspective. And of course, there is no Chester Water plan change in terms of rate changes. Yep.
Thank you.
Me again.
Yeah.
I've called Aqua 3 times, got transferred around a lot, and never did get an answer. I have emailed the PUC. Maybe you can help me understand. My bill is about $8 usage and $140 base before this. So where do I fall in there? What's going to change?
So you use about what, 4,000 gallons a quarter? Do you know if it's
I
80
use
bucks?
About 800 gallons a quarter.
Only 800?
I live by myself.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I use 700 to 800 a
Okay.
quarter.
Yeah. I live with one other person. We're blowing through 12,000 a quarter. So it's just, yeah. So you,
Showers than I do. I don't
yeah.
water on. But
Yeah.
So you wouldn't use, yeah.
something like that, is my base rate going to go up?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's actually going to be an increase for me.
Right. Yep.
Love it.
So it'll go from 136 to 163, I believe. So about $30. And then, so take more showers, I guess, because that would be, people that use more would see less. So unfortunately, since you're not using that much, you're only using 1,000, you would go from, $23 down to $12. So you would see a $30 cost increase on your base for a $12 savings.
So where you would fall is if there was another column here, it would be like 2,000 and then there'd be one kind of zero. You're kind of at that 1,000. And really you don't see any real, I think the people at the 2,000 are like break even. And then below that, it's a net increase.
I have
Like I said. But you would be the exception, not the rule in terms of
I have
total
sent
usage.
contacts with the PUC about their base rate structure.
Right.
There's got to be a significant number of people like myself who use very little and yet have to pay exorbitant bills.
So the one thing I know it's part of a process here, but you would fall into this category here. So I would take every measure you can, and you could actually put it online if you feel to do so, but there is a formal submission process, both kind of analog and
Yeah.
digital,
I've
to
contacted
parties,
them and
to
talked
seek
to
party
them.
status if you choose to.
But there has to be a significant number of people that are really getting the short end of the stick.
Correct.
And I realize you guys have
Yeah.
absolutely no control over this. You're just doing a good job of helping us understand. Thank you.
Nope, no problem. Thank you.
Chris, can you also comment on if residents are having trouble paying their bills, what they can do with Aqua? Can Aqua provide that? Is there a program that Aqua has to assist residents with paying their bills?
There are, I mean, off the top of my head, I probably couldn't speak fluently to it right now, but it is on their, most mediums provide that information on their website. So you just kind of navigate. And of course, if you have any question about that, please call in, send an email to the township. We can assist with finding the information and get you kind of liaison to the resources you need. But yes, there is, we'll call it like a bill abatement program or a payment program that they have. Correct. It's all AMI based, I think, for the most part, which is your median income, average median, annual median income.
Okay. Mr. Merzinski?
I have a few comments that I think may help people a little bit. The reason our rates are going down is, as he said, they moved us to Zone 2. The current Zone 2 residents are seeing a little increase. It's only a couple percent. But since we're already much higher than Zone 2, our rates are going down. It doesn't mean Aqua's getting less money. Different people are paying for it. And that's because Aqua can move, legally, they can move costs around. So our costs, the reason we were Zone 11, the only ones in Zone 11 originally, was because we were a new acquisition. And at that time, I believe there were 3 or 4 others. So they made 5 new zones, each with one township in it. And they did that because they hit us with that huge increase to cover what they paid, $29.5 million. They put most of that burden on New Garden Township. What they've done now is they've shifted us to the other to Zone 2, but that money is going to be paid by other people. And here's one point I want to make clear. They also have the ability, due to a law passed in the early 2000s, Act 11, they can charge their water customers, they can transfer wastewater costs to their water customers. This particular rate request transfers $22 million from wastewater customers to water customers. My opinion, they do this as a ploy. It doesn't hold up. That's going to change. I can't tell you for sure, but I'm pretty sure it's going to change. The last rate increase from 2021, the initial proposal, like what we're seeing now, called for a 37% rate increase for New Garden Township. We ended up getting an 85% increase. It's because they played the same game. They moved costs from New Garden Township to water customers. The PUC said you cannot move that much money. So it all came back on the wastewater and our rates went up. I expect the same thing to happen here. The PUC will not allow the 22 million. They'll force Aqua to put money back on the wastewater and our rates will be higher. But I think they're still going to be a lot lower than they are now. They're not going to get us back to, 85% kind of things. So be aware of that it probably will be higher, but I think it'll still be good. And my opinion, they do it because I've heard it over and over from them so that they can blame the PUC. When we got our 85% increase, they said, we wanted to only charge you 37. It's the PUC that did this. That's baloney. They knew exactly what was going to happen because they do it all the time. The PUC is doing its job. It's making sure that the money is going to the people who are using the services. Pardon me? PUC? I'd get arrested for libel if I started talking about what I really think about Aqua. So yes,
It's not libel if it's true, Pete.
it's my opinion that they are. Yes. Yes. They did it when they bought our source system. We had things in the contract that would have helped the ratepayer that they removed, and they blamed the PUC for it. And you look at all the documents, all the public documentation, and it's not true. The PUC never told them to do that. That's a different, whole other thing. The other thing I want to make clear is since 2016, our rates have gone up 140%. Since 2016, and I use 2016 because that's the year that we first heard about the potential sale of our sewer system. At that time, we were told that the sewer system needed $12 million of immediate work, and it was going to cause a 78% rate increase. 78%. It went up 140%. So even if we see that 23% decrease, we're still 110% over where we were in 2016. So we're still getting, so I'm happy we're getting it. I think we should be glad, but it goes nothing close to what we've been burdened with. And I don't want to get too much into this, but this is a very key point. When we were warned about the 78% increase, it was to pay for $12 million of system improvements, which were needed 8 years ago. Since then, there has been less than $4 million invested in our system. A good part of that went to fix a trucking problem, which is now saving Aqua millions of dollars a year. And give me just a minute. I lose my mind, so I'm trying to get to the point I was trying to make. Oh, the point is, yes. So we were told 78% was going to be needed for a $12 million investment. Instead, we saw 140%. None of that money has gone into improving our system. Zero. So any new work being done, we pay for again. And that's what this rate increase is all about. Then I have just a couple quick things. I've dealt a lot with the PUC. I have testified at these hearings. I'll give you a warning. If you plan to just go in and say, I can't afford this, they don't care. You can do it, but it's not going to have a big impact on them. Think about other ways of addressing the issue, not just I can't afford it. And then the zone issue, I said it's because we were new. That's why I did it. And the only other thing I wanted to say is you've covered already is that the very low usage people will see an increase. They will. Yeah. But that's at the very low. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Pete. Those are all very good points. Very well taken. Just to, yeah.
And unfortunately, she left. Chester Water Authority. Is the board aware of what this current situation with Chester Water Authority is?
Speaking with Lenny, just last weekend, I think it was, he informed me that the city of Chester filed bankruptcy and that put a stop on everything.
Right.
Because I asked him what was going on with the Commonwealth Court case and he said it's
Right.
high box, so.
But there is a lot of movement to get something to happen in the state legislature. If the legislature has the ability to change the law enough that it would save Chester Water Authority. But there's not a lot of interest in it.
Mhm.
So I encourage the board to do what it can to talk to our representatives to, if you have in other townships, I think it would be extremely worthwhile if every borough township in Chester Water Authority's service area would get together and write a letter to the governor, because he's got a lot of power there.
Mhm.
If all of these local municipalities got together and said to him, why are our residents paying for the bailing out of Chester, of the city of Chester? It's criminal that we will have to pay to bail out the city of Chester. It's something that the state should be responsible for. And I have written, I believe, to every municipality, and I've heard absolutely nothing back from anybody. So just in your conversations with these people, if you can help get that momentum going,
Mhm.
that would help the whole thing. The Chester County Board does not want to sell the Chester Water Authority. They do not.
Yeah, it was unanimously against. It was 9-0 against. Yeah, Chester County gets 3, Delco gets 3, and the city of Chester gets 3.
Well, our water rates will double if they.
Yeah.
Mhm. Right.
I think the problem, and this is just an opinion, is that it's a southeastern Pennsylvania issue. And then Pennsylvania is a very large state with people who either don't care or really enjoy kind of screwing the southeastern part of the state. So
But
we're,
the,
yeah,
both Aqua and American Water are expanding across the state.
right.
And they are now in the Pittsburgh area and Erie. You're right, that doesn't affect Chester Water Authority directly, but the whole issue of talking to our legislators to get them to act, we need to be addressing those other areas of the state.
Do you have suggestions? Because I mean, I think the representatives in Chester that I can think of, definitely the ones within the service area are all on board with reforms, but obviously that's about a dozen members. Do you have any suggestions for like these new areas?
Beyond,
Yeah, exactly, to get people, because you need like, what, 103 votes, I think, in the House. And
we're working on that. We have, quite honestly, we're trying to find ways to make this an election issue,
yeah,
which it is not because of what you said.
Mhm.
It's still local areas only.
right.
And those local areas in general support, not support, but oppose privatization.
Mhm.
Not all, but, so the goal is, the problem is trying to get someone who doesn't know anything about it. I mean, I don't know how much you want to get into this, but there are certain things people are trying to do in the Senate and legislature, but it's just not getting anywhere yet.
Right.
So,
Okay. Then last question, do you have a template letter you guys would be comfortable kind of drafting for us to review and sign to, that you could maybe give to all the other
yeah, we could
municipalities?
do that. We
Okay.
could do that.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. So just as Pete said, it's possible that these numbers won't hold up after the rate case is gone through. Like you said, that they did shift the numbers against us. But I mean, I'm hopeful that since we're in a larger zone now and we're not on our own, so they can't pick on us as badly. Because if what they're going to do to us, they'd have to do to East Bradford, to Norriton, to all the other places. So hopefully, and like Pete said, there's other ways to fight them on other issues. So I think that's it. If anyone has any, you have a question? Yeah.
like these zones, is that all up to Agua?
I believe so, yeah.
So next time they could put us in a zone where our rates go through the roof again?
Yeah.
But they've got our base rate up there and that will never come down, so they'll get the base rate
Yeah.
now. And
It's-
then they
it-
can put us in a different zone?
I have no idea what determines final kind of alignment. I know most of it is volumetric driven based off of aligned municipalities. And so if you were to kind of take somebody out and throw them over here in complete left field, and then you're trying to seek like reviews and approvals from the puck, I don't know how that would
But
go.
that's all up to Agua.
But
Nobody
that's
else
up to
has-
Aqua's alignment and then subject to puck review. So they look at all of the underlying, so that's just my understanding of the
We have no
process.
control over what could happen.
It's
Now,
a
could they
private
change our
company.
zone before the next 3 years when they're due for another rate increase?
I can't forecast that. I have no idea.
Not within,
Yeah.
Sorry?
not within the,
Yeah.
once they set it,
Said it can't change it.
correct, yeah, they can't just decide next year to, no, I don't want to do this. It's within the determined time.
Also, do we have any recourse if they haven't completed everything that they said they were going to complete? Like,
I think you can guess. No,
no?
no,
Legally, you can't go after them?
no,
Send anything to the PUC?
no. Like Pete said, they claim that they're, want to do $12 million of improvements. They do 4 million of that. And it's just,
And if they
It's-
don't do those improvements, there's nothing we can do about that.
no, but I think to Pete's point of attacking them on more substantial issues other than this is expensive, that would be one to attack them on. For me, it would be the executive compensation, because, and that was something that, I think a minority commissioner brought up, in the previous rate case, was that they're giving them like a guaranteed 10, well, both the investors are getting a guaranteed like 10% rate, which if you're investing, that's free money from us. And who gets a guaranteed 10%? And then again, the executive compensation, they actually got like a super bonus. The PUC said that they were doing such a great job. Here's some extra money. So every dollar that goes to an executive is a dollar that comes out of your pocket.
So we have no like kind of contract that they said for this amount of money, we will do this amount of work. We don't have
Correct.
anything like that.
No. Yeah, right. And then they can just say, we tried to do it, but concrete got really expensive. And so now we need another 20 million to do the thing.
Okay.
So, yeah. Okay. Anyone else? No? All right. Thank you. So we have fiscal year 2024 contributions for nonprofits.
Yes, I think I can, let me just quickly pull that up, actually. I can handle that one here. This isn't actually a presentation. It's mostly just kind of a appropriation from our fiscal year 24 adopted budget. These were the contributions that were proposed and adopted in terms of funding to our local nonprofit partners that provide what we discussed during last year's workshops, which was kind of basic service necessities in the area that the township does not provide. And so this is just part of the annual payment plan to them.
Okay. All right. You wanna
That's
go
it. There's
through-
nothing, yeah, there's nowhere else. Yeah, this is essentially because of the financial threshold limits. It just needs board approval to appropriate.
Okay. All right, do we have a motion to, I guess, we don't need to change the budget. This is already in. This is just authorizing the
This
payment.
is part of the budget plan. Yep.
All right, so this is
Yep.
just authorizing cutting the checks in those amounts to those entities. So do I have a
Motion to approve the $45,000 would be 15 for Kennett area. Community services, 15 for Mighty Writers. Would be 10,000 for TMAC and would be 5,000 for the Kennett area senior center.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? No? All in favor, say aye. All opposed? No.
There you go.
All right, thank you. Okay, and then last, we have the PennDOT traffic signal maintenance resolution.
This was, it's not a presentation, but it was the amended addition for tonight's agenda. And for some reason, my PDF file is not coming up here. But as we were getting all of our collective application documents together to submit for the Arlie grant, which is it's like I said, it's a red light revenue-based program commissioned by PennDOT to support revenues that get funded out and grant projects for pedestrian safety improvements. So with that, we're seeking funding to support pedestrian crossing enhancements for Smedley Preserve along Church Road. That's part of the adopted master plan. This is one where we have kind of some identified scope of work proposal that was part of the master plan. And in order to get grant funding to support that, it's a non-match grant. This was a requirement. You know, they looked at our kind of eligibility and our criteria, and they said eligible project good, criteria not in alignment because we didn't have a formally adopted resolution to subject to term to their agreement provisions about having a transportation, or excuse me, a traffic signal maintenance agreement. So it's kind of a compliance measure. To my understanding, there are actual added benefits to this. There are for future funding as well. It's kind of like a funding go, no go, if you will, from PennDOT. So this will help us kind of easily seek future PennDOT grants as well. So any questions about it? But this is more formulaic. It's no additional cost. It's just kind of an administrative item to correct.
So you want to approve it too?
This is more of a motion if you want to approve it to adopt resolution 24-010, I say -010, adopting to approve the resolution, which states,
Anything
what is
we
it,
add
actually the
will be
language of the
in
resolution?
PennDOT's.
The resolution really just authorizes Chris to sign everything.
Yep.
So that's,
Correct.
so it's a motion to authorize the township manager to, they won't process it unless there's a resolution attached that authorizes him.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 24-010. And this is in regards to the PennDOT discussion.
Any other discussion? Nope. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Nope. All right. Then we have managers' reports.
Right. Where's my clicker? Nope, left it on stage. So as a part of the manager update time, I just wanted to bring everybody up to speed in terms of where we are with our Act 209 study, which is our ability to adopt by ordinance a transportation impact fee, which essentially levies a fee against future developers on a per trip generated basis that essentially commissions that into revenue earmarked for transportation purposes. And for the most part, the scale of revenue usually offsets kind of planning and design and engineering type S costs, which usually come at no compensation from other grants as well. So think of it like another revenue stream to help kind of diversify our ability to do capital projects for transportation. Big wordy statement saying this stuff helps us out to get projects for that approved. So where we are right now, this is a part of a kind of long process that we started back at the end of last year in terms of seeking proposals, approving them, creating the TIFAC, which is the Transportation Impact Fee Advisory Committee. They still need to change that. I actually talked to the folks from Bowman. They said that, you know, they don't have a word in that one, but so I just call them the committee, and I'll say that for now. And just kind of where we're at in terms of the process that they have to do. But at the end of the day, we really kind of get 4 major deliverables. The 3 big ones are kind of bolded here, but we get an assumptions report. Think of this as they look at all of the factors about the township and they kind of define like a land use pattern for the township. Our current roadway sufficiency component to it. They develop a master plan for capital projects for transportation, which is something that we desperately need because we don't understand what it means to actually do projects of those types of magnitude in the township. So that's one where we can understand what that means for future project planning. And of course, the adoption of the ordinance to commission the fee. So this is kind of where we're at. This is all kind of rebooted information that we did in the prior version of this in the fall. But this is kind of what goes into those deliverables, if you will. And so I won't really kind of chart out here, but right now we're kind of in the early phases over here in terms of just basic analysis and understanding what our land use assumptions are for the township. So think of it like a 10-year build-out plan. This is the overall project timeline. As I said, we're kind of right here at the very start. So from a public perspective, just knowing that after these kind of basic committee meetings, there's going to be a public meeting to kind of bring everybody up to speed. So it's the same individuals involved with the Vision Partnership Program on the Route 41 corridor study. So kind of a similar transportation-focused planning update meeting, but this is, of course, for township specifics. And of course, we're always trying to get within the 18-month maximum timeline because that's part of the ordinance. If you don't adopt it by then, it's, you know, it's not an official ordinance that you can adopt. So that's kind of the big sticking points. We need to stay on pace here. So the TIFAC that was adopted within the ordinance, these were all members that were appointed based off of their criteria to support and participate in the process. That was done, I believe, in January, February. And then, of course, our first meeting as a traffic impact fee meeting after a couple kind of basic, we'll call them milestones were met. This was from a meeting that we held last month. So the land use assumption reports, it's in progress. This is kind of everything that's kind of encapsulated in that. So they look at a lot of like planning documents as well as their own analysis. They forecast the build out. They translate it into kind of like a base report. And so that kind of will be provided to us, I think, at the end of the first phase here. So that's kind of the starting point for the project. In terms of, this was also adopted in the ordinance, kind of all these roadways and intersections, but the whole point of the study is it has to identify like a 7 contiguous mile segment of roadway corridors that are subject to analysis. And of course, this was our conceived 7-mile study here. So we kind of gerrymandered the map to kind of fit in all the most active corridors because it made sense for us if we're looking for substantive commercial growth as far as the township's economic growth plan. You know, these are the areas that are kind of along those major arteries that we identified as the ones we need to review. So these are just kind of different ways of looking at it. These are all the ones that were adopted in the ordinance, and of course, these intersections translate to this area as well. So you're kind of seeing like there's a bit of a formula to all of this. They already did some traffic counts assessments. They're pretty much in line with the PennDOT average annual daily traffic counts as well. So they're just kind of basically validating all the numbers that create the metrics about understanding of intersection good, intersection bad is kind of the basic construct of it. They have kind of graded thresholds. It's kind of charted from A through, I think it's like E or F. I can't remember what they were off the top of my head. But essentially that's what identifies an intersection subject to being kind of like a higher priority versus a much, much lower priority. And of course, higher priority means higher likelihood to be funded with substantive grants, and the lower it is, it becomes kind of like a township influence. Granted, the takeaway in this is all of these are mostly PennDOT controlled intersections along PennDOT roads. So we have to always kind of say that the justification for the improvements needs to convince PennDOT. So it's like I said, it's part of a lot of factors going into it. This isn't just to say, we see this, now we want to do it, and it's going to get done. There's other factors at play here. So that's kind of where we are right now with the next steps. So they're continuing that land use assumptions report. We're estimating that to be delivered by roughly, I think, by the end of the summer. Of course, they're going to do that roadway sufficiency analysis as well, and we're planning for late summer to have the second meeting date as well. That's that committee sit down and kind of sit with our Bowman consultant and just going through the next kind of meetings agenda where we're just covering these items. So it's a pretty focused, pretty narrow project that we're getting kind of continuously kind of move forward, but this was just kind of a basic update here. So just want to let the public know what we're doing. And we're executing the plan, I guess, is the basic takeaway here. So any questions from the board? Real exciting,
No.
riveting stuff,
Yeah.
I know, yes.
No, I mean, it is incredibly important. I think that people don't understand that we've just been kind of adrift and been unable to manage.
The way I think about it is we pleaded for decades to get something done at the Baltimore-Newark Road intersection, and that was just kind of nominated and kind of agreed upon, but there wasn't any real kind of metric understanding that the township commission as a reviewable document that it can take development revenues and support that. So we had to apply for specific grants just to get that design. So there was a more formulaic approach to getting that project identified and done earlier. And that would have been if we had adopted Act 209 back in like the early 2000s. Instead, you know, we didn't. And of course, we're just kind of along for the ride, no pun intended in this instance, if we just kind of continue to sit on the sideline and just hope things happen. And that's kind of, this is a more proactive role for the township to push things into motion.
Mhm.
A lot of traffic puns tonight. We're
Yeah,
good.
right.
There you go.
All right, if you'd like to motor on to the next one.
There you go. Touche. Still screen sharing here. So I also wanted to provide tonight a brief update on where we're at with the Smedley Preserve, which of course was adopted as an official master plan document, I think 2 months ago. And just kind of providing an update of where we're at and what the kind of plan strategy is moving forward, because we're finding out more understanding about scoped costs and of course what that means for our grant strategy as well as estimated future funding levels. Sans grant success, kind of bringing that kind of base cost down is what our goal is. So kind of getting everybody back up to speed on March 18th is when we adopted that master plan. And of course, the whole scope and point of doing Smedley master plan for the Smedley Preserve revitalization and park implementation is to restore the site. That's kind of the big context word, to restore the site to a more naturalized condition. And of course, that's in alignment with our township goals as a part of our 2018 comp plan, which is commitment to open space, land conservation, greenways and trails, and outdoor recreation. That's kind of been a sizable part of the influence in our planning documents in New Garden Township. So of course, this is a part of that plan. And so after all of the master plan components were kind of lumped in with the full cost component added to it, it came out to roughly $6 million, 4.564 there to be precise. And of course, that is a sum of a lot of other kind of phased project elements to it as well. So hopefully this can kind of break down kind of the components of it a little bit more so people can kind of understand what is and what isn't. So the entire cost of the design and engineering, so this number is kind of based off of all of these elements. And so regardless of what we do, if we keep it at roughly 4.5 at this work, this is kind of a non-reimbursable cost. That's like a design and engineering investment cost that we have to get all of the reviews, all the plans, everything kind of permit, all that goes into this. That's kind of just baked into a base price, if you will. And so we split it after that into 2 bodies of work. One is about public access, getting people better able to get to the site, park, kind of all the signage, all the hard infrastructure, all that kind of path improvements, everything you want to call it. And then of course, the other side of the project is about site restoration. It's a big park, roughly 100 and I think 6 acres. And then in that, actually I think it's more than that. That's a lot of trees, it's a lot of meadow, it's a lot of coverage area. So of course that kind of creates a site restoration body of work as well. So the way I think about it is kind of like an immediate public access and safety component that we're going to immediately address and attack first. And this is going to be more kind of an overtime seeking kind of partnerships and programs that can kind of cover a lot of that cost for the township. So when I would kind of review this, I would say we should be more interested, not to say it's not a priority for the site restoration, but hyper interested in just getting basic access there first as kind of strategy number 1, and then phase 1 for the strategy, and then phase 2 would be the site restoration. But we can do both in concert with each other. It's not an either or. So with that, you can see it's kind of a phase 1, 2, and 3, mostly doing kind of all the basic constructs of public improvements. And then of course, as we want to phase in parking, amenities, stuff like that into the park, we can fold those in over time. But you can kind of see where those kind of bodies of work all go into. Like we would do trail paving and resurfacing first. It has an existing trail, doesn't need improvements, but the entirety of the cost is roughly about $880,000. So if you don't familiar with the master plan, you can see that it's kind of chunked into these phased areas. The red hatched area is that MS4 project that's being conducted by RES, which is the engineering team identified by PennDOT to implement our MS4 program on behalf of that PennDOT funded program. So that's kind of not at cost to us. Additionally, we already kind of contributed our ARPA funding for that one to get that going, and that's already started. So they're still proceeding on course with a roughly late fall through the winter full implementation of our sediment reduction project. So that's a good news here, because after they go in and complete the kind of stream restoration effort. They're going to do a lot of seeding and planting. So the hope is kind of like maybe throw some on the outskirts so to maybe kind of do some efficiency of work there by taking away certain chunks of the property off of the scope for the site restoration. So initially, like I said, the township is focused on public access improvements. So we're layering as many grants that have significantly lower cost matches for the township. We're kind of funneling our energy into those first. And then as we're kind of successful and we have kind of a remaining cost at it, we would fold in the remaining grants that are eligible that would be higher match items, because unfortunately there's not a ton of zero match that scale up to multiple millions. It'd be great if there were. So we're kind of doing the best with what's available in our state funding programs that are eligible right now. So you can see we're looking for and have already submitted a DCD grant just for the 250K. It's a roughly 15% match. So our township local share would be roughly about 60,000 for that. And then of course the Arley grant, which we discussed tonight, it goes up to $1 million, but the total scope for the pedestrian crossing is roughly 360,000. And of course, they're kind of constantly giving us feedback. So this is likely subject to some sort of scope change and likely a reduction as well. But we're still working with them in the kind of back and forth feedback with them as we submit the application. And then of course, there's an LSA grant. It was actually mentioned earlier by the Kennett Library. It's kind of like a, I think it's funded by casino revenue. I think if that's right. So it's basically just like a big pooled grant application that's approved by the Commonwealth Financing Authority. But the good news is it's the largest 0% match with a scalable amount of capability, and we would submit for as much as we can in the phase 2 improvements, which is about those basic park improvements. And the good news is this is kind of a rolling year over year, so you can come back and ask for more as well. So that's why I said take the trail paving and resurfacing. It's a need, but it's not an immediate need, so we would address that maybe in a future LSA as well. So it's based off of just kind of where these, I'll call them, available programs are for what we're applicable for, and then of course when as well. There's some other ones for DCNR as well. So the good news is there's no shortage of grant funding. It's just basically the scope of the cost and then just how much that kind of chunks out of what we would have to provide in terms of local funding. But the good news is even if you're successful at 100% hit rate for all of these, you could take a $2.86 million cost and basically chart it down to 1 million, which is, you know, a significant savings in capital costs for that as well. So that's kind of what we're always talking about is ROI. Taking a PAR project and getting it 65% ROI would be a massive win for us, and that's what we're striving to do. That isn't to say that there isn't more things that can be done here in terms of just taking other sources of revenue and funding that as well at no cost to our, what I would consider most critical resource, which is our cash fund balance position that we have. And of course, that's one where currently, as you remember, the replenishment rate is not as substantive as the reduction rate. So at a certain point, we're just going to continue to bleed out that balance. So stopping that kind of hemorrhaging at some point should be a priority. It's just that we have so many critical capital needs on the table right now that we have to get through, most notably some of the big road issues that we have that we're trying to attack. There's going to be some net reduction here, but once we kind of get through that hurdle, we can kind of look where we're at and see where it makes sense to pull remaining fundings to complete these projects. And of course, the site restoration component of it, we're going to be assessing as much kind of beyond the township's own cost to cover this. So this is one where there's just not a lot of examples of townships taking on $1 million to revitalize a forest. So there's not a lot of like comparables, I guess, if you will. So we're just kind of saying, hey, if we're a one of one, can we be treated as a one of one and maybe seek some extra funding for that? Because that would be one where, you know, this would be a sizable amount that we would have to prioritize over other projects that have equivalent scale and priorities as well. If we want to talk about timeline, I always hate putting these up against the board because they never hit. Well, let's just say in theory, if we started today and we executed it all the way through, it'd be roughly a 16-month timeline for, this is for the public access components part of the project. Now, granted, grant timelines don't meet up with straight funded timelines, so there is some squish kind of in the middle there. But I would say if you're doing everything kind of in sequence with each other and you get to the full 16 months with some kind of creep in the project, you're probably likely to see about a mid-26 to end 26 completion for those public access. So we would have the parking lot, the restroom, the trails, everything done by the end of 26. And that's what we want to try to start getting into, is planning for completion, not just planning to get involved and then kind of things kind of just bleed to the right a little bit. And that's it. So any questions about that? We're going to be providing more routine updates about this so people understand what the status of the park is, because we get that question a lot. Because of course, as you drive up to the golf course, you see it and it's a weedy state right now. People wonder what we're doing there. We're working on it. It just takes time. And that's one where we literally just got the master plan adopted in April. So I tell them, post-adoption of the master plan, then you start the counter. So we're just now getting the counter started. And any questions?
No, I think you all are doing a great job. Do you have any questions? Anything? Yeah.
All right. So I just have one more quick update, and this is just more of a subject to any final inputs from the board regarding our annual budget calendar. Super fun. So as we all know, we usually do our workshops at 5:30 on off agenda, public meeting agenda nights throughout the beginning of the, probably the end of the summer to the beginning of the fall. So I would say based off of I know that was because of obviously the recommendation for the increase, the involvement there. So if we have a similar level of involvement, would there be any amenability to pushing these meeting workshop date start times a little bit more to the evening time frame rather than early evening, just to allow more people to get home, kind of get settled, and maybe be able to participate. Of course, these are all publicly advertised. They're all broadcast and recorded. Everything is kind of saved in kind of that kind of orderly manner in terms of people understanding the narrative that was involved in some of these workshop discussions. And so all of this is still 100% in alignment with the original workshop calendar, except for a shift to the left earlier in the month for what we would do our capital funding review as well as our revenue review. And that's solely because I have a conference at the end of the month for ICMA, which is the International City County Manager Association. So I will be away for that and that September 23rd date. So I'll recommend that we move that to the Monday following Labor Day, which I think is the 2nd. And that's really it. Everything else is pretty much executing the plan. So we don't have to decide on this now, but any inputs about the tentative plan here? And of course, like I said, we'll get this put on our website calendar, and when it comes closer, we'll provide updates about when it's going to happen and where.
My tax sale is actually September 9th, but if we're going to push it back to 7, that won't be an issue. 5:30 might have been an issue.
Okay.
But 7 should be fine for me. I think the only
This is
question
more about logistics at this point, so yeah.
Right. So speaking of logistics, is there a way for Troy to consistently call in and provide his input? 'Cause-
Everything can be remote access for the board as well, because these are not public agenda items. These are just workshops, so it's not a formal agenda.
Right.
Yep.
That's why. Right.
Yep.
Okay.
That was a common feedback and input item. People were requesting it, so I figured it would just be easier because since we do all of our routine interactions at 7 as an early start day, as a normal start time, it just made sense to move it to the right a little bit.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay, great.
Out of that, I have nothing else to report.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. And then we have the resolutions we approved. 24-009, the Kennett Library Tax Voter Referendum, and Resolution 24-010, the PennDOT Signal Maintenance Agreement. So that's just a reminder, and then just get those signed before we leave. What, Renee? And just a reminder that the township office will be closed this Wednesday for Juneteenth, as well will the county and federal offices. Most banks, I think. It's a banking holiday. And speaking of the Kennett Library, they will be having programming on Saturday, along with the Kennett Heritage Center at 11 a.m., I believe. So looking forward to seeing that. And we have our Rhythm and Brews is continuing on the 25th of June. And we have the Planning Commission meeting on the 26th. So Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second? Second. Any discussion? Nope. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Nope. Meeting's adjourned.